Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses again. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and I have a packed show for you this morning again. Um, we'll be looking at a story from the US, a rather depressing story of a TV news team actually covering a live motorcycle chase. Which actually resulted in a fatal crash. We'll be looking at a Surrey bike crash very briefly. I don't have a lot of details on it. All I can tell you is that locals believe that frozen mud on the road, which had been there for several days and not been cleared up, was a contributing factor. In London, an e-scooter was videoed travelling at 50 miles per hour on the North Circular Road. In Jaipur, a fleet of COVID bike ambulances has been launched as India faces an Omicron wave. Um, we'll look at the Valeo electric drivetrain. It weighs under 18 kilos and delivers 125 performance. And finally, today's talking point, I'll be following on from the Skills on Saturday posts that I've been making over the last 3 weeks about the changes to the highway code. In particular, 2 points I want to bring up, as well as a summary of the changes and some comments from an HGV instructor. I'll be asking what happens at box junctions when you apply the new rules, and also whether or not instructors have been given any guidance on how to approach the new rules from the DVSA. So, okay, that's what's on today's show. So settle yourselves down, grab a brew if you want one, and stay with me for the next 30 minutes or so while I run through all these stories. So, good morning to Martin, who's looking in, and Kevin also. Hi there, Kevin. Nice to see you both again. Right, so what have we got for you today? Well, as I said, the first story that I want to cover um, is from Los Angeles, where the local TV station, CBS News, um, actually covered a fatal motorcycle crash live. Now, the story that has come out, I'll just explain what apparently happened. Um, but the implication is that the Los Angeles Highway Patrol were actually effectively showing the chase, which was being filmed from a police helicopter, live and feeding that to the CBS TV news station directly. So, news anchor Amy Johnson was actually commentating on this live video stream, which was showing this speeding motorcyclist when the rider collided with a turning car, and the video itself stops at that point, but there's a speed shown on screen showing 76 miles per hour. Now, she was left, not surprisingly, visibly shaken by this crash, which sent the rider flying through the air. The motorcycle was stolen from the San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles, and police said the unidentified rider was actually traveling on Roscoe Boulevard in West Hills at about 1 p.m. on Thursday. And again, the video shows the rider reaching speeds of over 100 miles per hour. Sadly, the rider died at the scene of the crash. Now, the Los Angeles Police Department were quick to say that whilst the LAPD helicopter was actually tracking the motorcyclist, they were not actually chasing the biker on the ground. And their statement said, there were some statements made that we were in pursuit of this motorcycle. I just want to make it very clear, at no time were we in pursuit. LAPD Captain Andy Neiman continued, there was something that alerted undercover officers. They ran the motorcycle license, and it came back as a confirmed stolen. When officers attempted to pull the motorcyclist over in a nearby parking lot, he bolted from the scene. When he fled, a decision was made by the supervisors and the incident commanders that we would not pursue this motorcycle. and he went on to say it's a very sad day. Two occupants of the car were also injured in the crash, but were in stable condition. Now, I happened to mention this to my brother, who actually lives in LA, and he commented, this kind of thing is actually standard daytime television out there. And a US journalist, somebody called Matt Meisel, said on Twitter, "We need to do a better job as a news medium. It's nothing more than shock value porn news, aired knowing full well what was about to happen, cut away in shock and horror, then plastered on social media, even though someone died." But frankly, is it just the media that should be asking questions? Why are the LAPD delivering a live stream of something like this happening to a news station in the first place? It's a very good question. I think, it's something that needs some answers out there. Many people complain about the BBC, but I really sincerely hope our national broadcaster never sinks to those depths. Right, okay, who else we got looking in? Sue and Graham have both arrived. Good to see you both. Thanks for looking in. Don't forget, you are watching Elevenses from Survival Skills. I'm Kevin Williams, and the show goes out live at 11 on Wednesdays and Sundays, nearly always live. Very, very occasionally I have to do a recorded show. Right, so what else has been going on? Well, another collision, sadly, with another fatality at the end of it. And this one happened here in the UK. It happened in Surrey on the A25 between Reigate and Dorking, a road I know particularly well. Police were called to this incident just after 8 a.m. on Saturday, January the 15th, so just over a week ago. Now, the driver of the car was initially arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, but he's since been released, and whilst the incident is under investigation. The Surrey police have named the rider as 20-year-old Louis Brown from Reigate, and the A25 was actually closed, it says, through Saturday and Sunday whilst the investigation continued, but also emergency repairs took place, and photos show tributes left around a lamppost. Now, there's no mention of the circumstances of the collision in the report, but two comments on the story from locals throw some light on what may have happened. Someone with the pen name of Pen and Paper wrote, "The A25 where this happened was covered in mud from the works that had happened on the farm. The mud had been there for days and had not been cleared up. On a cold morning, the mud had frozen. There was a sign on the road warning that mud was on the road. The sign had been placed exactly where the mud began. It should have been 50 yards up the road. The accident was totally avoidable. It's criminal. This mud had not been cleared up." And this was confirmed by somebody called Jasper Cuthbert, who said, "Why did this journalist make no mention of all the horrific mud on the road, which had been there for days, building up with no attempt to remove it, and on that fateful morning had frozen solid? Poor Louis would have stood no chance." Police are asking for anybody with information or desk cam footage to contact them. As to why the journalist didn't report on it, I very much doubt the journalist was anywhere near the scene. The story would have been written entirely from the police report of the crash, and most of these police reports make very little comment on the circumstances of the crash whilst there is an investigation ongoing. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you've got a comment or a question, do drop me a line. I will try to answer during the show if I possibly can. If I can't answer it during the show, I will get back to you at the end of it. In respect of that, we have who we got Kevin looking in, and another Kevin, yes, Kevin Paul has just asked Buckland Bends, presumably about the Surrey accident. I don't know. I do have a tighter location on it. I haven't actually looked it up on the street map to see exactly where it was. You can find the story fairly easily by going online and searching for it, and possibly if you know the area better, you'll be able to pinpoint where it happened. Okay, that's pretty much, unfortunately, sort of par for the course crashes like that, which are pretty much unexplained by the police. But every now and again, you kind of see an incident which is filmed or photographed, and you just wonder how on earth the person involved is actually staying out of trouble. Have a look at this particular photo, which I still haven't managed to set up. I'm still trying to do that. I'll get there in just a moment. Here we go. That should now pop up on screen for you. That it still is taken from a video which appeared on Facebook earlier this week, and basically what it's showing there is an e-scooter zipping along the A406 North Circular. It's on the westbound carriageway. It's approaching Henley's Corner. Now, as you can see, the surprising thing is that the scooter is in the outside lane of the North Circular Road, and it's actually filmed overtaking cars. Now, this is actually a 50-mile-per-hour speed limit, going into a 40 a bit further up. Now, you'll probably be aware that the e-scooter trials in the UK, the bikes are actually, the e-scooters are actually speed limited. The government regulations have set the speed limit to a maximum of 15.5 miles per hour, but in London they've actually set a 12.5 mile per hour speed limit on the scooter. But as this video shows, privately owned e-scooters are unregulated, and this one at least is capable of going with the flow on a major London road at considerable speed. Now, predictably, the video went viral, and it's made it into the mainstream press, where it got the full shock horror treatment from readers. Now, frankly, this issue isn't going away anytime soon. Despite the threat of points and fines, which has been regularly repeated, and the fact that the Met Police have reportedly seized no less than 3,987 privately owned e-scooters last year, there are reportedly hundreds of thousands in use. And so far, we know that 3 e-scooter riders have been killed in crashes, and a further 729 have been injured. Okay, so not all news is doom and gloom. There is some interestingly positive stuff around the world. For example, if you travel to India, to the city of Jaipur, you will find that the local service out there has launched. There we go. I'll get the photo up in a moment. It's all been very complicated this morning. Just a minute. Let me just zoom in on that picture a bit for you to make it a bit clearer what you're looking at. There we are. So that's Rajasthan, the city of Jaipur, and this is a bike ambulance service which delivers medicines to patients who are self-isolating at home as India locks down, ready for its next COVID wave. Omicron is just starting to take off out there. There are 25 bikes for the city, which will be transporting vital supplies around, and the city recorded just under 3,000 cases on Thursday this week. And basically, this initiative sort of follows on and formalizes from a bunch of people who actually gave their time and as volunteers to transport materials and sick people to hospital. One rider from Kerala is said to have taken over 500 people to hospital for treatment using his auto rickshaw. So yeah, some positive things from people. Right, okay, Nick has looked in too. Now, something I've been saying for some time is that conventional PTW manufacturers will have to be very careful they don't miss the electric motorcycle boat, if that's not mixing my metaphors. Right now, the vast majority of electric PTWs on the roads are the product of small startups scattered all over the world, as well as some bigger engineering companies based in India and China. Although there have been the big splash press releases from the likes of Triumph and Ducati about their impending switch to electric power, the only mainstream manufacturer who has actually produced a working electric motorcycle that's available over the counter to buy right now is possibly the least likely of the lot. Of course, it's Harley Davidson with their Livewire motorcycle. And now what's beginning to happen is that firms better known in the automotive world are also starting to take an interest in electric two-wheelers. So the company that I want to talk about today are called Valeo, and they're a French-based automotive manufacturer, and they have been involved in producing electric powertrains for cars. And now what they've shown off at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas earlier this year is a 48-volt electric motorcycle prototype. Now, it's based around their own electric drivetrain. And that consists basically of a 6 kilowatt or 8 horsepower motor transplanted from the brand's two-seat Citroën Ami car. That's one of their micro cars. Now, the French company doesn't actually plan to mass produce electric motorcycles, but what they do plan on doing is offering their drivetrain as a sort of plug-in for other manufacturers to build electric motorcycles around. And this is how they see things proceeding. Let me try and get that up on screen a bit bigger for you. Okay, it seems to be in the wrong format for the photo, but hey ho. So that is actually a Super Socco TC Max, a bike I've mentioned here on several occasions. Now, in stock form, the TC Max has a 60-volt system, but it only yields 6.7 horsepower, so around 5 kilowatt. So the Valeo drivetrain, which comprises the motor, transmission, and electronics, it weighs under 18 kilograms, and it actually produces 12 kilowatts, which is around 16 horsepower, from the 48 volt drivetrain. So Valeo claim similar acceleration and performance as a petrol-powered 125 bike, possibly a little bit more actually than most of them. Now, the interesting thing is that this actual drivetrain package aligns with the standardized configuration that's been agreed by Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki and Yamaha, but also the Eurasian Swappable Battery Consortium, which has been signed up to by Honda, Yamaha, KTM and Piaggio. So, okay, so far nothing particularly new about that, apart from the fact that it's basically a plug-in item that anybody can build into their bikes. But the one thing I did find interesting is that Valeo are also manufacturers of what they call the smart e-bike system. Now, this is actually a package aimed at bicycles. And as well as the usual dashboard that shows speed, battery level, maintenance alerts, and that kind of thing, the bike has other features, and one of which, of course, is regenerative braking to recover the energy when you slow down and basically extend battery range. You get a boost function, which makes it easier to overtake other cyclists and to climb hills. You get a reversing and pedestrian push assistance, and that's aimed specifically, they say, at cargo bikes, which obviously could be quite heavy, and it's particularly useful when performing sort of parking maneuvers with heavy loads. The other thing that the system comes with is an anti-theft function, which is integrated directly into the pedal assembly, so that when it's activated, the pedals are locked, which prevents somebody actually pedaling the bike away. Doesn't stop them carrying it off, but of course, at least it's one deterrent. Now, the interesting thing I thought is that it's easy enough to see how any of those could also be built into the electric motorcycle drivetrain that they've been showing off here. And what really caught my eye about the smart e-bike system is that it is the first electric bicycle to implement what they call an adaptive automatic transmission. They say it's a world first. Basically, what it does is it uses predictive algorithm to instantly change a gear according to the cyclist's need. And the gear shift takes place in less than 100 milliseconds, regardless of conditions. So that's a tenth of a second for those who prefer easy to understand units. No buttons, no levers have to be pressed. The bike just detects what's going on and changes gear for you. And according to the Valeo website, it means e-bikes can now benefit from the same advantages as cars in terms of adaptive automatic gearboxes. Now, we know that Kawasaki are working on an electric motorcycle with a smaller motor, which is combined with a conventional 4-speed gearbox, although it probably will stay a prototype. It does give an idea of the direction of their thinking. And according to some reports, it's at least partly to give riders the sensation of changing gear. But other suggestions are that it allows for the use of a smaller motor, but one that can still reach higher speeds. Now, as more and more drivers get used to automatic cars, of course, gears are something that may be putting a lot of potential users off conventional petrol engine bikes. Yes, there are scooters with automatic transmission, of course, but it did make me wonder whether or not this adaptive automatic transmission could actually be built into the kind of smaller, lighter scooter and commuter PTWs. I'd be interested to know what you think about that. Do you feel that automatic scooters are a good way forward? What do you feel about having an automatic gearbox built into your bike? I mean, people are used to them when driving now, and of course, we do have the DCTs system in the big Hondas. This would appear to be something which could apply to smaller motorcycles. All right, okay. So don't forget, you are watching Elevenses. You can catch up with the show every Wednesday and Sunday, as I mentioned earlier. But if you head over to my youtube.com/Survival Schools UK channel, you can catch all the old shows too. If you miss one, that's always a good place to go to find the missing show. And if you do enjoy the show, don't forget you can head over to my coffee page, again, /Survival Skills there, and you can support me over there. And if you buy me a coffee, you also open up a month's access to around 800 articles at the moment, and more are going up all the time. Right, okay, so on to the final item for today. I've been talking about the highway code changes in schools on Saturday on the website for some time, 3 weeks, in fact. And these changes to the highway code will go live unless there is an objection in Parliament by the end of this week. There is a 40-day period at which somebody can lodge an objection, and that would stop the legislation in its tracks. As of yet, that's not happened, and it seems unlikely it will happen. So if that's the case, if there's no objection, then the rules will go live on Saturday, the 29th of January, automatically. This is a point that a lot of people seem to have been confused by, because the written highway code isn't yet updated, of course. Just in case there was an appeal, was an objection, and everything got put on hold pending some more talking. So people are saying, well, these are only provisional rules. Well, they aren't provisional rules. Trust me on that. They are going to happen in the format in which they have been discussed and they have been publicised. So I do recommend that you go and read the full articles over on my Facebook page if you haven't done so. But in brief, here are the changes that you need to be aware of. Now, firstly, Rule H1 introduced what they call a risk-based hierarchy of road users. And the idea is that it aims to protect those most vulnerable by placing those in charge of vehicles that can cause the greatest harm in the event of a collision, placing them in a position of more responsibility to take care and to reduce the danger that they pose to the more vulnerable road users. So in descending order, it's trucks and buses, vans and cars, but also motorcycles and scooters are considered to be the groups that need to take care, despite, interestingly enough, motorcyclists and scooter riders being a vulnerable road group themselves. Cyclists, horse riders, and drivers of horse-drawn vehicles, yes, there are a few around, likewise have a responsibility to reduce the danger to pedestrians. Now, it's been explicitly explained that the hierarchy does not remove the need for everyone to behave responsibility, but the rules do change the way we must approach some maneuvers. And Rule H2 explains one of those. And again, it's aimed at drivers, motorcyclists, horse-drawn vehicles, horse riders, and cyclists. Now, it's long been the principle that you must give way to pedestrians on a zebra crossing, but now the rule has been changed to say that specifically that you should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross a zebra crossing, and also to pedestrians and cyclists waiting to cross on a parallel crossing, which is essentially a cycle crossing next to a pedestrian crossing. Now, the fact is, of course, that examiners have expected candidates to stop in this situation for a long, long time, ever since I've been a bike instructor back in '95 when I did my instructor training, and it was definitely a should do then, but it is now explicitly stated inside the highway code itself. But the other instruction is the one I think will cause the most confusion, because it says that at a junction you should give way to pedestrians crossing or waiting to cross a road into which or from which you are turning. Now, prior to that, you had to give way to a pedestrian who was already in the road. So if somebody had actually stepped off the road and was mid road as you tried to turn in, then the highway code said that you should stop and let them finish the crossing until you could turn safely. But now they can be standing on a pavement waiting to cross, and it says you should give way. Now, I'm not the only one to have mentioned the fact that there's a risk of stopping and being tail-ended in this situation. I've got a picture here actually. I'll pop that up briefly for you. Here it is. Let's get that on screen. That gives you an idea of how the let's just resize that slightly, make it a bit easier to see on screen. There we are. So that's the problem. You can see the car is shown there turning left and the pedestrian crossing the road. So you'd have to stop and give way to that pedestrian. But it doesn't, of course, apply simply to left turns. It also applies to vehicles that are turning right. You would have to look and check that no pedestrians about to cross the road in the side turning you're about to turn right into before you commit yourself. People have sort of flagged up the risk of being hit from behind if you stop unexpectedly. And of course, there's a real problem that if you start the turn and then somebody just steps off the pavement in front of you while you're already committed, you should stop. And that could leave you stranded across oncoming traffic. So there could be real potential risks there, especially on a motorcycle or even on a cycle, come to that. And something else which I would be really interested to know how it will pan out is the implication for box junctions. Now, you can enter a box junction to turn right if your passage is only blocked by oncoming traffic. But what if you start to turn right and then your exit to the box junction is blocked by a pedestrian? And what if you enter a box junction intending to go left and you are stopped by a pedestrian? And what if you're going straight over a crossroads at a box junction and again somebody steps off the pavement and walks across in front of you and you're forced to stop? In all cases, you'll come to a halt in a box junction. Your exit wouldn't have been clear, and in theory at least, that would be an offence. And as more and more councils are getting powers to put cameras on box junctions and actually find people for offences like this, I'd be really interested to know how that one is going to pan out, because now essentially you have to stay out of a box junction if there is the possibility somebody could stop in front of you. I really think that one needs to be thought through. I may be seeing the worst possible scenario, but these are the things we have to think about. I've got 3 comments. Let's just see what people have had to say. Oh, it's all right. I'll come back to those. Yeah. All right. The rule H3 then, that's essentially common sense in as much as it says that you should not have cut across cyclists. So again, I'll just go back to that diagram there, and you can see that the car is shown turning right and left with a cyclist going either side of the car. The rule extends to horse riders and horse-drawn vehicles, and basically it says that you shouldn't cut across them when turning into or out of a junction or changing direction or lane, just as you would not turn across the path or another motor vehicle. And specifically it says do not turn if doing so would cause a cyclist to brake or swerve. And essentially that's the highway code's prime directive: do not make another road user change speed or direction to avoid you. And it simply explicitly extends that to cycles. It's always been the principle. But again, there are problems with the way that it's laid out. What happens in that situation where you have that car turning left, for example, when the stream of cycles going up the inside of the car is actually traveling faster than the car? Does this rule give the cyclist a right, in inverted commas, to continue passing a car on the near side, even though perhaps the car driver is clearly showing a left turn indicator? Now, many drivers fear it will, and that the driver will need eyes in the back of his or her head to see the cycle coming. Remember, I keep telling motorcyclists how poor the rear three-quarter vision is in the average car, let alone a van, when turning left. But what about when you're turning right? Now, the diagram there shows a car turning right across the path of a cycle coming from behind it. But what if you are passing across the front of a stream of traffic coming the other way? Maybe there are some high-sided vehicles in that stream. Maybe the nearest vehicle to you is a bus. What if there is a cyclist coming up at speed on the inside of the bus? How is the driver going to see the cycle? How is the cyclist going to see the car? Who's responsible for a collision? The new rule appears to put the driver entirely in the wrong. The rule also says we should give way whether the cyclist is using a cycle lane or a cycle track. Now, a cycle lane would be on the road, usually, but if it's separated, if it's one up on the pavement, what this appears to give cyclists the right to do is actually ride straight off a cycle way like that and into the road across the path of a turning vehicle, whereas formerly it would have been a give way sign marking across the end of that cycle lane to ensure that the cyclist stopped whilst the car completed its turn. Once again, we're going to have to be looking in all directions to see what's happening, particularly as a lot of cycleways are on one side of the road and they are actually two-way. Department of Transport spokesman said the proposed upcoming changes for the highway code will improve safety for cyclists, pedestrians and horse riders. I'm not convinced, and neither is Ben Graham. Now, he's a truck driver and truck instructor who often comments on my posts, and he suggested a scenario in which an HGV driver initially moves to the right to make a left turn easier, and then starts to turn left and then stops because there's a pedestrian in the road. Now, at this moment, the cab's mirrors are no longer showing effectively the inside view up the trailer. But having stopped, the cyclist who is approaching from behind assumes that the truck has given way to her or him and starts to cycle across the trailer when the driver fails to spot the cyclist and recommences the left turn. So I mean, I can see a lot of ways that things can go wrong. I see the rules creating a lot of grey areas rather than offering good guidance. And somebody actually said this during the consultation process, and the DFT's response was that everybody needs to use their judgment. So I thought, okay, one area where drivers will be explicitly told how to deal with this is during the driving test. So I went on to one of my Facebook groups, a group for motorcycle instructors, to see what the DFT and the DVSA had advised motorcycle instructors to do, how they should change their training. And I wasn't entirely surprised to find that somebody else had had the same sort of concerns and had actually asked, does anyone know if the DVSA's examiner guide will or has been updated for the new changes? Has anyone received anything from the test centres on how examiners are going to interpret the new highway code changes, particularly at junctions? And this person also proposed a couple of scenarios, again, one of which was turning right at crossroads, which was exactly what I said. And they said, what do you do? Do you wait in the middle of the road? Do you start your turn and sort of stop just into the side road? Or do you sit in the middle of the road and block the traffic? When turning left, he said major to minor, do you move tight to the curb in case you have to stop? What do you do if you stop and a pedestrian waves you on? So they were all useful questions, several of which I'd identified for myself. And the answers that they got was that one person said he'd spoken to his local examiners about this earlier, and they have not yet received any direction on how to assess it on test. The examiner's educated guess was it'll come down to taking the safest option. Is it safe for you to stop to allow pedestrians to cross? And he said that we have to remember that it's a should rather than a must in the highway code. Another instructor apparently was told not to change anything. Now, the problem I always see this is that judgments made on the road often appear to be poor decisions when there is plenty of time to review those decisions in court in hindsight. It's not so obvious when you're in the middle of a decision-making process in a hurry. And frankly, I do fear that whilst most pedestrians and cyclists will continue to protect themselves and won't do anything daft, there will be the odd green transport activist who will seek to exploit those rules that appear to give them priority. Ben Graham actually put it perfectly in one of his posts on Facebook. He said, in my mind, we have to work from a basis of people taking responsibility for their actions and their own personal safety. The less people are responsible for, the even less they take responsibility for their actions. And I fully agree with him. I hope I'm wrong and that things won't go badly wrong out there and there won't be a lot of accidents. Many people have written comments on these posts telling me that I'm wrong, but I always think it's better to be pessimistic and thus forewarned about what could happen rather than being blithely confident that it will all be all right in the end. If you want to follow this up a little bit more and find out a bit more about what the DFT have been saying, there is a document here, a PDF actually published by the government. I'm just putting the link up now, which you can go and read. Right, so some comments on this. Kevin Paul says, thanks for all the time taken to share the info and thoughts on the highway code changes. You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you for your feedback. Kevin Gladstone says, is the green cross code being simultaneously updated? I don't think we actually use the green cross code anymore, do we? I have no idea on that one. Good question. Kevin also says that there's a combined footpath and cycleway that crosses his minor road. There are no giveaway markings for cyclists. He's curious to know who will have to give way. Well, I think we've explained that one. Yeah, so, and one other comment, Martin, who I believe you're out in Mongolia, aren't you, Martin? He just took his electric mountain bike out for a first ride. Not cheap. 32 miles per hour is pretty good. I could only cycle that fast down a bit of a hill and probably not on the off-road either. 80k range, that's pretty good, isn't it? Nice, excellent. Yeah, they'd be good fun if they were legal on the road. Right, so that's pretty much it for today. Just a couple of quick reminders. Don't forget that the gift vouchers are still available on my website. They run till the end of February, and then when you've bought one, you can use it anytime up till November. You don't have to book a course yet. It's just a case of buying the gift voucher, and then you save some money on the course. There's also an inexpensive gift voucher, which just happens to give you the right amount of cash back to buy one of my online coaching sessions. And finally, date for the diary. Don't forget the Science of Being Seen presentation is coming up. I've got actually a interesting little snippet from some research which has just been publicized about visual perception issues, and I'll be looking at that again in a Science of Being Seen. What I'm doing is I'm breaking them up every 2 months, every two Science of Being Seen, it will be the full presentation. So Science of Being Seen is being done 6 times a year. So 3 times a year I'll be doing the full presentation, and every alternate presentation, so another 3 each year, will be looking at a specific issue within Science of Being Seen. This time I'll be looking at the sort of additional insights into the looked but failed to see error, and why it is that visual perception doesn't always show you what is actually there to be seen. So that's out. That'll be 2nd of February. You can book a ticket right now. You can get it here if you're interested. Do come along, even if you've seen the full show. The updated one here with the more detail will be of interest, I'm sure. Right, I've wittered on plenty again today, so hopefully we've given you some insight into the highway code problems. Hopefully you found the rest of the show interesting, and I'll be back on Wednesday with the next Survival Skills 11s show. So thanks for tuning in. If you're riding out there today, do stay safe and